Seeing what's making the front pages, and Greece, we've been hearing a lot about Greece. Could Greece be ready to exit from the Eurozone? That's the big question.
Yes, well, some of the German press already seem to have decided they've made up their minds. Punchy front cover from Der Spiegel this week. They've got Acropolis Adieu as a front page. Why Greece must leave the euro as a headline. Now, why must they? Well, they reckon that over the last 2 years, about 380 billion euros of bailout cash have been thrown into Greece from various different sources. None of it has helped the patient get any better. It's just got sicker and sicker. So we've got to recognise, they say, there's a point when you can't throw any more money at this problem. The Greeks have opted out of the austerity plan anyway. Of course, a majority of them voted for parties who completely reject the referendum that both the Greece's mainstream political parties signed. That memorandum, of course, was what brought the EU and IMF inspectors into Greece to start checking up on the state's budget. Now, of course, the vast majority of Greeks have rejected that in the parties they chose to vote for last Sunday. You've got to reach a point, says Der Spiegel, where if they don't want it and we can't afford to pay for it, let's just get them out of the euro. Of course, that point of view, that particular front page, hasn't gone down particularly well with some newspapers in Greece. On the front page of Ethnos, they've got a hold of that Der Spiegel front page there, also at the bottom. They're not happy with it. The headline says, Syriza pushes us towards new elections, looking like the likeliest option now in Greece after no one can form a coalition government. But if you look at the cartoon in that paper, it shows the other European leaders trying to push poor Greece off of the edge of a cliff made out of the shape of the euro. There it is there. So they obviously feel rather picked on over at Ethnos. They, as the New York Times explains, the vast majority of Greek public opinion doesn't actually see why staying in the euro should necessarily mean having to agree to all these harsh austerity measures that were imposed. They reckon, just like far-left party Syriza has been saying, there might be a third way they can stay in the euro and not make all those budget cuts. The problem with that is that the numbers don't really add up.
Just before coming on air, I actually Googled the word ethnos to find out what it means. It means the nation, for our viewers, in case they're wondering. Now, Der Spiegel, they're not the only people saying that perhaps it's come to this point, hasn't it, that Greece may have to leave the Eurozone.
Yes, German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble, interviewed in Die Welt yesterday, said that it's no longer taboo to have Greece pull out of the Eurozone. We can't force them to stay in. They say that, you know, of course, if they're denied the next slice of bailout cash, which Germany has said they will be if they don't stick to those budget measures that the previous government agreed, they could be completely out of cash by July. And Die Welt does evoke a rather apocalyptic scenario in its paper where all of Greece's banks would have to be frozen, depositors wouldn't be able to get their money out, the banks would have to be nationalised, capital controls imposed to stop people leaving the country with suitcases of cash, maybe even border controls imposed to stop all the Greeks just leaving and taking all of their possessions with them, the newspaper points out. So they make that scenario look rather bleak. The Guardian says, though, that the consequence of that would go a great deal beyond Greece in their editorial today. Some finance newspapers now starting to say, well, all the markets aren't really affected by what's going on in Greece anymore because they've all priced in the likelihood of a Greek default. But nevertheless, the consequence of it would go far beyond Greece's borders. We can't forget that the allergy to austerity isn't not only specific to Greece. Electorates everywhere, even in Germany itself yesterday in those regional elections, are starting to reject the austerity cure, and governments have to listen to them.
Absolutely. And in Spain, there was something of an anniversary at the weekend, a year of the Indignados movement.
Yes, they first occupied Madrid's Puerta del Sol Square on the 15th of May last year, of course, so they're now marking an anniversary. Of course, one that's been rather less celebratory than last year. Then it's a very difficult political context then than now. Then it was a left-wing government who were not very keen to sort of unleash the police's harshest possible riot control measures on those protesters. Now, of course, there's a right-wing government that's passed new public order measures, and as El País points out, the protesters are now accusing them of using unfairly harsh measures and arbitrarily detaining people. They say 20 people were injured last night as police started to clear protesters out of the Puerta del Sol in central Madrid. Now, the paper's editorial, this is a left-wing paper that generally supports the aims of the Indignado movement, but they do say that while the social problems in Spain are worse than they were a year ago, its popularity is going down. This time last year, 2/3 of Spaniards backed what the Indignados wanted to do. Now it's only half, so they have to find a new way of winning over public opinion.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Elena Casas. That was a review of the international press. Let's get a quick check now of our top stories here on France.